Well, here's the good news, Vashi. You do not have to feel bad for the Liberal minister.
It's one unbelievable thing after another. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today we found out that the Liberals have been paying to teach people how to speak, giving them lessons how to speak in committee. We're talking people from the CBC. We're talking the police. This is outrageous. We got a panel on CTV talking about Mark Carney's failed immigration minister. We got a bunch of stuff. Let's jump into this. Starting this one off, we got some polling data coming out of Ontario, and Doug Ford is getting slammed, as we see here. And I not mentioned this for the past month. Nate Erskine-Smith announcing that he's running for the Ontario Liberal leadership, Bonnie Crombie going out the window, and now Doug Ford has some competition to compete with, and that's what we're seeing here. Minus 26 down to 54 seats. That's modeled out here by Shreya Teest, with the Liberals going projected up to 52 seats, or plus 38. So we look at the polling data itself here, it's 40 to 36. If we looked at this data from a couple months ago, the Liberals were way down. It wasn't even close. Now Doug Ford has a real problem here. They need a real conservative party in Ontario. Yeah, not Liberal light. Yeah, Doug Ford's not a real conservative. And what does old Dougie have to say?
There's a new poll out this morning from Liaison Strategies that has your party at 40% support, 4 points over the Liberals. You're down 7% from the fall. Do you think that the federal party and Pierre Poilievre are pulling your party down any?
No, you know something, Liaison, they're heavy Liberal pollsters. Last week, another poll came out that we were 45%. They were down 30. I had another poll. We're at 45. They're at 20%. You know, polls are for dogs. And the only poll that counts is on election day. So all these pollsters, they're a little biased, pushing up one, bringing down the other. The people will decide. The people will decide if they want to go back to tax and spend governments, chasing 300,000 jobs out of the province. We've gained 1 million jobs. We've never raised taxes. So if they want to tax and spend government, we aren't the ones.
Ford has been dragging the CPC down for years. It's a weird dynamic there because a lot of Liberals will vote for Doug Ford, but that's because they didn't like Bonnie Crombie, and now she's gone. Liberals surge with no leader. I mean, that's sad. The buffoon is correct, but he's lying if he doesn't pay attention to the polls. Yeah, Doug Ford's watching those polls. Of course he is. We also got GM Forbes here posting this graph. If a provincial election were held today, which party would you vote for? I mean, look at Doug Ford's party here. So it's hard to read at the bottom here, but this is May of 2025, and then this is January of 2026. So 3/4 of a year right here. This goes all the way back to 2024, February over here. Moving ahead, we've got conservative Steve Bonk dropping this bombshell here, showing that the Liberals are paying witnesses when they testify to give answers that are favorable to the government. It's unbelievable.
Well, I've got bad news. The Liberal government is once again wasting your money. Today, we're going to talk about parliamentary committees. They perform a vital function in the operation of government. It's where parliamentarians like myself get the opportunity to ask questions of the government when it comes to expenditures or if we want to make amendments to bills. And part of that is where we get to call witnesses. For example, we had a witness come forward at Agriculture Committee, and I asked him a very simple question about if the government's imaginary taxes actually have an effect on the bottom line of producers in Canada.
Do you think that Livestock Mandatory Reporting Act, like they had in the United States, would be useful in Canada? Because we had something similar that's been discontinued.
So I think it would be very useful. I know we had it in the past through CanFax.
I asked a simple question. He gave a very simple answer, but that's not the way it often is.
Hysterics, hysteria, it refers to something that is wildly emotional. It comes from the Greek word womb, of the womb.
And sometimes we ask
I can't believe they use that clip of her talking about her womb. She starts crying and all this nonsense. Good thing she's a former NDP MP. That lady was insane.
direct questions. And we get these answers where we're like, what on earth are you talking about?
I hope you'll forgive me if I get emotional. Climate emergencies are not gender neutral. The degradation of ecosystems disproportionately impacts women and girls. And I am wildly emotional.
So I'm a businessman and a conservative. And it got me thinking, is someone paying to coach these people? Because normal people don't talk like this.
Well, I actually would put a different a response on error. I think error is a natural part of all journalism.
So I put in an order paper question. I was curious if the government had been paying to train witnesses and how much is it costing the taxpayer? And you will not believe what I found. The government spent $263,000 coaching witnesses, often government employees, on how to answer simple questions in the most complicated way possible. Get a load of some of these numbers here.
You catch that? $263,000 to coach people to speak in a way that's favorable to the government. That's what they're spending our money on. We break our backs, pay taxes, and that's what they spend our money on.
Department of Finance, $38,000. The Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions, $27,000. The RCMP, $24,000. Public Health, $20,000.
I'm sorry, they spending $24,000 to coach the RCMP on how to answer questions? What do you even say to that? That's unbelievable. This is not like somebody who's afraid to speak in public and they need a little bit of help or something like that. It's the RCMP. And who's it going to be? It's the brass. It's the top level that protected Justin Trudeau during the SNC-Lavalin scandal. Still looking to investigate that one. Haven't found anything. Yeah, of course they haven't found anything. It's so corrupt, it's unbelievable.
But the worst offender of all, the CBC. $78,643, a communications company. This is outrageous. We have the CBC that is funded by the taxpayer to the tune of $1.4 billion, who get coaching from an outside consultant in the tune of $78,643 so they can come to committee to defend why they're getting bonuses. Sorry, did I say defend? I meant spin. Here's a clip of Andrew Scheer in committee where he's questioning the CEO of CBC. And I just want to see if you'll catch something here.
Another measure of success or failure, if there aren't a lot of errors, and that would be a good thing. If there are a lot of errors, that would be a bad thing. Would you agree on that?
Well, I actually would put a different response on error.
Do you see that? Watch again.
Well, I actually would put a different response. Did
you catch that? She was about to say spin.
You're damn right she was about to say spin. That was a Freudian slip. Catherine Tate, disaster, waste of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars. These people are all disingenuous shills.
Now, why would she say that? Did someone coach her? I want to know exactly how much that cost. How much did it cost her to defend the millions of dollars of bonuses that were paid out to CBC? Because by my guess, it's thousands of dollars. But this is just another day in Liberal Canada.
I don't agree with the premise.
I don't agree
with the premise. 9% of Canadians say that it is important for the country to have a public broadcaster like CBC Radio-Canada. 82%.
Who commissioned that poll? Who commissioned that poll?
Those are our public perception surveys that we conduct.
Oh, you conducted. Okay. So your polling tells you that Canadians like what you're doing.
Shay.
Yeah, Andrew's got her there. Our own polls say we're doing a great job. Canadians like us.
Survey firm.
I love how Andrew handles this one. It's a masterclass. I know for a fact he never had coaching for this committee. He wasn't even on the committee. He was a substitute.
I was going to say that he was a substitute for this one. He stepped in last minute. Someone else was running this committee and he just came in here and nailed it. This is just another example why people should never vote for the Liberals ever again. Look at this clip here.
Radio-Canada is the most admired media brand in the country. There are many surveys that indicate that CBC and Radio-Canada remain very much loved among Canadians.
That's right. Your own polling firm told you that you're loved. That's great. Meanwhile, Rosemary Barton, hot mic, it's all made up anyways, of course. Once again, never stop, never will, the Liberal way. Blacklocks is the only reporter-owned and operated, aka independent investigative outlet in Ottawa, and it shows excellent work. Isn't that the truth? All the rest just paid off shills. So after you just seen that, we also have this one here from conservative Carrie Diot. CBC bias exposed. A detailed study conducted with AI by media watchdog Honest Reporting found CBC had been incredibly biased in its coverage of the Israel chips and hummus conflict. At a Canadian Heritage Committee, he asked the Minister of Canadian Identity, Mark Miller, if it was a concern. What do you think the answer is?
It analyzed 2,789 CBC news articles published between October 7th, 2023, the day of that terrible massacre, and June 7th, 2025. And it found that CBC's coverage of the war demonstrated significant imbalance, and there is consistent, overwhelming bias against Israel. So I'm wondering, Mr. Minister, does it concern you that public dollars are being sent from your department to CBC, and this report calls into question its very impartiality and actually questions its stated journalistic standards and practices.
I'll say a couple things, and I don't presume that my answer will make you happy, Mr. Diot. First and foremost, the CBC, as you know, is independent. It doesn't mean that it is unaccountable and that I am not entitled to an opinion on this matter. But I think I want to be very judicious in my answer, in particular because of the ongoing situation in Gaza, but also because the CBC itself has its own mechanism internally. Ultimately, the CBC is accounted to the public, and it's important not to attach that type of condition to financing of the public.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we know where he stands. Independent, yeah, not independent. So the CBC can be biased as much as they want. The taxpayer dollars will keep flowing to them. How can CBC be independent when it receives billions of dollars from liberal federal government a year? People are not stupid. And once people see this, it makes you feel dumb if you've ever been a CBC watcher in recent years here. CBC wasn't always corrupt, but boy, it's been corrupt for a long time now. So jumping ahead here, they bring on Nick Nanos. We don't need to hear what he has to say, but there's his recent poll. 41 to 33. They also have a multi-poll here. You can see here, so Liberals up 13, 7, 12, 7, 13, and 9. So it's no denying it that Carney's up. How much he's up, we don't know. But now jumping over to the panel here, talking about Lena Diab, Carney's immigration minister. We know one of the Liberals who's been having a problem with her is, well, Nate Erskine-Smith.
I don't think it was handled particularly well, but in terms of the minister herself specifically, I'll let other people comment.
Okay, but would you say she's a good minister?
I've had frustrations with that one file, but again, these decisions are for the Prime Minister.
Look how long it took him to answer that question. The answer is no. He doesn't think she's a good minister.
We also asked the Prime Minister's office for comment on the Conservatives' call for him to fire the minister and whether Diab should remain in the position. They would only refer us to these comments from the Prime Minister earlier today. Here's what he said.
I'm blessed with an exceptional cabinet, and we're working forward for Canadians.
That's so weak. I'm blessed with an exceptional cabinet. He doesn't really believe that.
And just a note, we did ask for the immigration minister herself for the third time today for this week. All our requests, pardon me, I can't get it out, have been declined. Probably a good thing then if I couldn't.
Third time they requested her and she won't come on.
Happy Wednesday. Not so happy for the minister, I would imagine, Laura. I was saying to you right before we came on air, and the clip from Nathaniel Erskine-Smith really backed it up. The thing that strikes me today is certainly the silence, kind of the lack of people in her caucus and in cabinet jumping to her defense. What does that say to you?
It says that everyone is a little bit afraid, right? No one really wants to come out and defend a minister who hasn't been defending herself. And let's be clear, it's not great that the minister and the spokesperson on the immigration file isn't out speaking to media on immigration. She was in the House of Commons today, but it's not great that she's not out speaking about it. That said, if you set aside the media strategy for a second, it is a shame that they're not out speaking about it because the government has made moves on this file, pretty significant ones. Temporary foreign workers are down by half right now. Foreign students are down by a third. Asylum seekers are down by a third. The population dropped for the first time in years.
That's not something to brag about when you've dramatically increased it so much that even dropping it by half is not even moving the needle enough. All these immigration ministers are a complete disgrace.
July and October 2025. So the Prime Minister and his government are making the type of common sense changes and policy changes that they need to make when you're tying the immigration file to the economy, which you have to. And
you notice that common sense moves here. They're trying to steal Pierre Poilievre's language. These guys all having a scrum. Okay, what's their messaging that's working? Let's steal that. That's what they keep doing. The Liberals are a bunch of swindlers. Their entire scheme is just to trick Canadians versus just doing what's best for Canadians who pay for everything.
And it's also quite strategic politically. They are forcing Pierre Poilievre to move further right, like we saw yesterday in the House of Commons. That is all actually quite good political strategy and public policy.
This is nonsense. They're not delivering on the promise of cleaning up the streets, having our own deportations, closing the border, actually vetting people coming into the country. They don't have to move further right. The Liberals are not executing on any of this stuff.
Even despite the stuff that Laura says, it's a communications problem to a degree, right? Like, I know there'll be debates about the policies and whether they go far enough, but they certainly go further than the last number of years. have not been able to successfully land that message, it seems, through this minister.
It's not a message. Vassie's very woke on tonight's episode here. FYI.
Yeah, if anything, it actually makes you wonder is who's actually running the ministry, because when you've looked at what the minister's had to say publicly, she always kind of has this exasperated tone and doesn't know her file. Previous committee appearances, she always had to lean on her officials to answer any questions of substance. And so I think I look at what this minister has to say and how she says it, and it's hard to come across as saying this is a minister that knows her file. And so I think that the prime minister, especially on the eve of a big international trip, is he going to have this kind of drag out for the next week and crowd out his own headlines for what he's doing on this big international trade mission?
That's a great point there. If this keeps dragging into the media cycle, which I doubt it will because the media doesn't cover this stuff very much when it's critical of Mark Carney, they breeze past it pretty quick. If it does, then it might drown out any sort of wins that Mark Carney brings home, which we know full well will just be deals for Brookfield.
Yeah, I should point out, Sharon, that the reporting from Radio Canada basically contended that there were a number of stakeholders that said that she had been much more absent than other immigration files in their communications, for example, with her, other immigration ministers, in their communications with her and her office, and in the number of Liberal MPs they spoke to, who didn't provide their names, obviously, but said that they took issue with her performance as well. This is kind of an open secret, though, I would argue. And I almost feel a bit bad for her. If everybody knew this from the start, that there was a communications issue, why allow it to get to this point where you're not even, now she's in a position where you're not even defending her?
Why are we feeling bad for this immigration minister that's getting paid $300,000 a year and helping with the destruction of Canada? She's doing an awful job. She should be fired. There's no feeling bad for her. This is so woke from Vassie. And her saying, this is kind of an open secret that everyone knew. It's like diminishing her being incompetent, making it okay. Are these talking points coming from Ottawa? It sure seems like it.
Well, kind of pivoting back to what Laura said, this is why it's really important to actually get out there and have these discussions in the media and among stakeholders. Sometimes the silence can actually be worse. And I think what the Conservatives are doing here by pointing this out, though, it is trying to deflect away from what the government as a whole is actually doing on the immigration file. If you look at what the Liberal government has done versus what the opposition is proposing, there are two very different narratives that are kind of being put out there. From the Liberal perspective, I think it's very easy to say, listen, our immigration system is somewhat broken. We have not been able to keep up with infrastructure, housing, healthcare, all the services that immigrants need coming into a country. It's just not adding up there. So there are measures that are being taken place, and there's actual data to show that. Whereas the Conservatives are turning this into a bit more of a anti-immigrant discussion. And it might not be intended, but that is how it is coming off as. So I think it's in the best interest of...
That's what she's doing here. This has nothing to do with any of the specific people coming in. It's straight math. We can't be a nation that has 250,000 housing starts per year and then be bringing in 2.5 million people per year. They know what they're doing here. It's a Century Initiative. That's what they're doing. They're intentionally bringing in so many people for numerous reasons. It's great for their big corporate CEO buddies who can charge lower wages. It's great for the real estate industry. Justin Trudeau owns a real estate development company. I'm sure Mark Carney has lots of real estate himself as well. There's multiple reasons for this, but none of them are good for Canadians. Then you've got paid Liberals going on these panels like Sharon Kerr, all of them. I believe the going rate is $300 for every appearance they have on here. They're paid to do this, and then people like Sharon Kerr attack Canadian content creators for being paid shills when we don't get paid by the parties or the government.
Of the minister to, if she needs, take some media lessons or whatever the case may be, but silence is never a great look for a minister or her office.
Did you hear that? Take some media lessons. We'll go back a little bit before.
Best interest of the minister to, if she needs, take some media lessons or whatever the case may be, but silence.
Yeah, that dovetails quite nicely from what we just heard from Steve Bonk. Media lessons. It's all about the media lessons. Get those lessons to know how to talk to the people. We don't have any honesty around here. No integrity, no authenticity. It's just unbelievable. I mean, once I heard that the police are getting these media lessons on how to talk to the public, it's just disgusting.
I appreciate a lot of that spin, but I would say we've spent the past 3 days scrutinizing the Conservatives' position, and there's lots to scrutinize on immigration. I don't know it's possible to argue it's their fault that the minister is failing to communicate on a significant file. I do, like I said, I feel bad in a way because it's an open secret. And I feel mostly bad because now she's not really able to defend herself, Sebastian, And nobody is jumping to her defense, even though they put her in that position in the first place.
Well, here's the good news, Vashti. You do not have to feel bad for the Liberal minister. You should, however, feel bad for the Canadian people who are suffering the brunt of the hurt because of the Liberal immigration policies.
You got to look at Vassie's face here. He's calling out her comments there.
The brunt of the hurt.
She is so uncomfortable because he's calling her out with that. No, we don't need to feel bad for Lena. She's doing an awful job. She should be fired. That's how this works. She doesn't even know her file, and she's getting paid a ton of money.
Hurts because of the Liberal immigration policies. Prime Minister Carney likes to say to Canadians that he's leading a new government. What that means in practice is a bit more questionable because the Liberal policies on immigration have continued largely unchanged throughout into his time as Prime Minister. At any opportunity, Prime Minister Carney has taken the side of the big business lobby and promoted temporary foreign workers and cheap labor to displace Canadian workers and those not just in major urban centers, but in small towns across Canada who are struggling to find work. So listen, whether the minister is able to communicate or not, it doesn't really matter to the Canadians who are out of jobs and who can't afford to make ends meet because they cannot find labor to make money. And I think the sooner Canadians realize that this is not a certain minister's fault or another minister's fault, is really the fault of Prime Minister Carney, I think the quicker their issues will be resolved.
Yeah, the jobs market is so bad. There's a guy who knocked on my door and just begged to do yard work. He's so down on his luck, he needed some work. Can I clean something up in your yard? Can I mow the lawn? Can I blow the leaves out?
Once again, I have to thank you and admire your attempt at spin, and I appreciate it. I will also have to point out, though, that you're right that the TFW program remains intact despite the Conservatives' call to get rid of it and David Eby, the Premier of BC. But on a host of other fronts, like temporary residence in particular, there has been a significant drop. And the targets overall for both permanent and temporary have been decreased. Whether that comes to fruition in the coming years remains to be seen, obviously, but there is a discernible difference on some parts of that. Okay, I got to take a quick...
Discernible difference. Significant drop. Oh, really? So whoever runs this website here, immigrationstatistics.com, this doesn't have the 2025 data on it. It has some of the data down here, but it doesn't have the full year. But this person does have an X account, and we have this right here. Just from February 17th last week, it says, note, this is for new students only. There's still over 2.1 million work and study permit holders. They've only declined 10% since December 2024. So December 2024, 2.39 million, and now there's 2.15 million. This isn't a big enough drop. Obviously, this is way too many people. So this account here also pointing out some data here on asylum seekers, and we see we had a record year last year. This is kind of difficult to look at. I believe it's like every half year. The ticker's on the bottom here, but you can see this is 2024 and then 2025. While we have had a drop, it's significantly higher than when Trudeau got in way back here. As of October 1st, 2005, there was 504,000 asylum claimants in Canada, 500,000. So are they doing enough? No, not even close.